Hello techies, I'm Divya here. On behalf of CyberBrainer, don't you think the world of tech is evolving faster than ever? Now is the perfect time to dive in and build the skills that will take you places. With CyberBrainer, we are putting you in the driver's seat of your own future. We at CyberBrainer don't just teach your interest. We believe that knowledge is power, but it's applied knowledge that truly sets you apart. Whether you're diving into data science, mastering artificial intelligence, or exploring the world of cybersecurity, our courses are designed to give you the skills that matter. So let's jump into the session and make the future yours today. Thank you.
We were talking about unpivot stage. We will discuss that. Unpivot stage basically enables you to convert from column to. Basically, they allow. The idea is it allows you to better align your data. It allows you to convert your data from columns to rows. Basically allowing you arrange data in a derived data in a meaningful method based on whatever analysis you are doing. As we discussed, it is only applicable for derived. Datasets, we cannot add an unpivot stage in a base dataset. The second thing is that it is applicable for all field types. If you remember, we added an unpivot stage for a couple of field types, and what were those? If I go to data catalog, we did that in DDs. And if I click on edit, we added our unpivot stage to basically two different field types. Let me go ahead and delete this and add once again. Click on add stage and add an unpivot stage. What are the fields that I want to unpivot? I want to unpivot the vesting dates field, vesting date 1 and 2 and 3. I'll search for those fields. I have vesting date 1 and then vesting date 2. This allows you to rearrange your columns into rows. Right? Currently, this data is spread over 3 columns. I'm calling my fields as vesting schedule and vesting dates. And I can click on preview. And when I do that, it shows me the conversion. Now, if you see I have the 3 rows of data added vesting date 1 and zo 2 load 3 and the corresponding date values. Similarly, I also want to unpivot these 3 values 100 and 100. I'll click on plus. And then I would select those fields. I have quantity vesting zone 1 and then quantity vesting zone 2. And quantity vesting zone 2, and I'm then giving a name. Right. Quantity vesting schedule. And let's call this quantity vesting amounts. And set. When I do that, I have been able to now convert my columns into rows. Write the vesting date 01, which is 1st of Jan 2021. And as part of it, I would vest 100 quantities. Vesting date 2, which is 1st of Jan 2002, and I'll vest 100 stocks, and then vesting rate 03, which is 2023, and I'll vest 100 stocks. And these are all for the worker logarithmic leaf. And I can now go ahead and save this. If you see, I have basically unpivoted two different field types. Let me click here. When I click this it identifies as a field of type text. Right now, on what basis was it identified? Based on what I imported. When I imported my plain text field, that plain text file, that CSV file, at that point in time, based on the data that is being loaded, system identified a relevant field type. Here, because it is all numbers system identified, this is a field of type integer. Here in the first column, system identified that this is a field of type text. Here system has identified that this is again a field of type integer. This is a field of type text, and on and forth. Workday, when it does that import right, or it does that parsing when you initially imported data into your data set. System basically identifies a relevant field type. Now, if you want, you can always go ahead and change this. You realize that, no, this shouldn't be a text. This is actually a date field. If you want, you can go ahead and change these values. And the reason I would also need to change this is because now I also need to do some mapping. Let's talk about that. But before that, I would go ahead and complete these notes. Your unpivot stage is applicable for all field types. Whether it is a text, whether it is numeric or it is date field types, you can basically unpivot any one of them. You can unpivot up to within each stage. Even though it was a field of type text, I was able to unpivot it. It doesn't matter what is the field type. Right? This is a field of type text, and I was able to convert it into a column. Right. Similarly, this is a field of type number or integer, and I'm still able to convert it from rows to columns. It doesn't matter what is the type of that field, you would be able to unpivot it. And the second thing, if you see, I took 3 input fields here. Similarly, I can add a maximum of M50 in a given stage. I can unpivot up to M50. That is your unpivot stage. Now I'm going to save it. Now, in addition to this, there is a stage called Manage Field stage. Let me go back to the data catalog. If I open any base data set, let me open View in a new tab. And I'm also opening the Dataset 3. What is a Manage Field stage? Right, let's click on Edit. And when this opens, let me also click on Edit here. Let's see, I have opened two data sets. One is a base data set, which is basically this one. And one is a derived data set, which is this one. If you remember, this is our final derived data set that we had created after all the joins and unions. Now I have added or created one more base data set, which is by reading in data from an external file. Now, because this is a base data set, when I click on Add Stage, it only gives me three options. One of this is a Manage Fields. Similarly, on a derived data set as well, if I can add a Manage Field stage. What is a Manage Field stage? To manage fields, a Manage Field stage. It basically allows you to view field changes. It allows you to select fields and edit fields. We'll talk about view field changes in a bit. If you see a Manage Field stage, it allows you to do three different things. The first one is to view the field changes, and I'll talk about this in just a bit. But now I'm looking at the edit fields and the select fields. Alright, now, when I initially imported my file into this base data set. Alright, now, if you see, when I imported this file, right, and I imported this file from my local machine. When I did that parsing, and based on parsing, it simply imported all data. Right, and when it has done that, it has basically identified or tried to identify relevant field types. My first column, if it has identified, is a column of type text. My second column, it has identified that this is a type integer. My third column, again text. And similarly, my vesting dates, it has identified them to be of type text. But if you see, these are not actually types of text, type text. These are all date dates. I want to change or update these field types. For those kind of editing the details of the fields, editing the field names, editing the field types, or basically selecting or non-selecting certain fields. I would add a Manage Field stage. Now I would add a Manage Field stage. Here it shows me all these field types that were imported. Now vesting dates or tree. It is identified as a field of type text. I'm saying no, this shouldn't be a field of type text. This is actually a field of type. Now I don't have the option to directly change a text to a date field. Because I don't have that option directly, I would have to create a Prism calculated field. That is something I'll look at later. But now I don't want employee ID to be an integer, because employee IDs can also have characters. I'm converting this to a text. Similarly, these values, which is quantity, if I scroll here, 100, 200, and 300, these are all classified as integers. I don't want these to be integers. I want these to be numeric. Numeric comes with a decimal precision. And then I can show whether I want a decimal precision or not. The moment, if you see, I change it to numeric, system adds this particular icon for me. And I can use this icon to select the precision I want. Maybe I want precision up to 2 decimal places. I can select that. The first purpose of a manage field stage is that it allows you to edit your fields. And what do I mean by editing a field? I can change the field type that I want. Again, quantity granted. This should be a numeric field, and the quantity outstanding. This also I want to be a numeric field. Right. Now some of these fields I don't want to select. I can simply uncheck them. When I uncheck some of these fields, and then if I preview, if you see, those fields are removed from the output. A managed field stage, it allows you to edit your fields. When I say edit your fields, you can edit the type of those fields. You can select which field should be displayed or not displayed by simply checking them or unchecking them. And then you can also change the output name of the field. Here it is worker, the input name. And if I want, I can change the output name. Instead of worker, or here instead of employee ID, I want to change it to worker ID. Now the third aspect of a managed field stage. Now if you see, I have changed the field types. Instead of integer, I have changed the field types to text. Which means now, if I go back to my derived dataset, this derived dataset is created using this base dataset. I have now changed the base dataset itself. Now if I go to my derived dataset, let's see what is happening with my base dataset. Quantity granted, here it is still showing as integer. I'll have to refresh this. The second thing. Let's say, now I have. If the second aspect of managed field stage is the view field changes. What is this view field changes? If you remember, I created a few base datasets using my custom reports. Now, which basically identified my dataset schema. What is the schema? Basically, the number of columns in your dataset, the column types or the field types, the type of data. That is all your dataset schema. Now what I'll do is if I open the company details base dataset. Let me go ahead and open. This one, I'm saying view in new tab. Let me open the supervisory details. And let me click on Edit. This is my base data set that I had created for importing my supervisory organizations. Now, it is always recommended that we add, as you just mentioned, that add a manage field stage. At the beginning, to a base dataset. To identify any changes in the schema of the data source. What do I mean by that? I created a custom report and then I imported that custom report to create my base data set. Now, later on, I add a new field to my custom report. Right now, when I add a new field or maybe remove an existing field from my custom report, which is basically my data source, and then import this data source once again to my base data set. Now, when this happens, the schema of my base data set has changed. Earlier, it was importing 10 rows of data, or let's say 10 columns of data. And now a new column has been added, or maybe an existing column is deleted. This manage field stage allows you to basically identify any of those field changes that are happening. And that is why Workday always recommends that you add a manage field stage to a base data set. Let me show that now. This is my base data set that I had created. With this base data set, I'm adding a manage field stage. In this stage, I'll not do anything. I'm simply adding this stage and I'll simply say done. I'm not making any other changes. Now let me go ahead and change the schema of the data source. What was my data source? The custom report. Supervisory structure. I would go ahead and edit this and add a new field. Some random column, right? I'll go ahead and add a random column. I would add a column here. I'm taking this column, which simply identifies the type of that organization, and save this. What I'm doing now, I'm changing the schema of the data source. Let me run this to show you the difference. This is my custom report. In this custom report, if you see, I have added a new column. How is it different? This is my base data set that was created using this custom report. In this base data set, if you see, I have this supervisory org name, which is the first one, followed by the Workday ID, which is this one. Then organization level from top, which is this one. And then these two sector fields, sector and sector BU. This, and then three headcount related fields. Headcount FA1 and FA2. I have your headcount. And FA2. Now, in addition to this, in my data source, I have added a new column. Now let's see what happens when I re-import the data. I'll go back to my dataset. I'll go to Actions, Dataset, and I'll run this integration once again because there's some change in my source. And I want to import that source once again. Obviously, your data keeps changing and you'll have to keep re-importing the data. I'll cancel this once again and show you. This is a dataset. I want to re-import data. I'll go to the additional actions, dataset, and run this integration now. I'll confirm this and you have successfully started the integration run to bring data into the dataset. It says that it is last modified on 25/2021. At this time, I would quickly refresh this. When I do that, it still shows me the same field supervisory org name and then ID and org level. This field is still not displayed. Let's click on Edit. Oh, I didn't add a managed field stage. I forgot. No, if it's now, there's no way for that is good. And which is without a managed field stage. If you see, I have no way of identifying whether this field was added anew. Here it shows me that field is added, and when I save it, it will go ahead and save this field. But as such, if I go back to view dataset without saving it, it still doesn't show me that field here which shows supervisory org name and then Workday ID and then org level 1. However, when I click on Edit, here it shows that type field as well. However, without a managed field stage, I have no way of identifying whether this field has been added, new or it has been removed, or on and forth. Managed field stage allows me to identify that stages, those changes, or not change it. Right. This is how my current base dataset looks without me adding a managed field stage. Right now, let me go back and re-import this data once again. I'll go ahead and quickly edit. It is good that I forgot saving it. This way, you will see the difference, how a managed field stage is different from not having a managed field stage. I'll quickly edit this data source. Remove this. And save this. I have once again changed my custom report and once again removed that field. I'll re-import this data. Run integration now. I want to re-import this data. Always. That's why when you make any changes, save it. Else, this is the confusion that would happen. This is fine. Now that type is removed. I would add a manage field stage now. Click on Done. And also save this time. My dataset is saved. Now I'll once again go ahead and change my custom report. This time I would add the exact same field. Now if I go back to my data set and rerun this data set once again, run this integration now. Reimport the data. I'll confirm. Again at the overall dataset level, my field is not yet added. I'll click on Edit. However, the difference is this time and the Managed Field stage. It shows me there is a warning. At the Part stage, even though if you see the field is added, it shows me that extra field here. But that field is not yet saved. It shows me that there is a change in your schema. Managed Field stage allows you to make or any of the field changes. And that is why it is recommended that it is always added to your base data set as a first stage. Because that allows you to actually see, have there been any changes in your data source? Has there been a new field that is added? Is an existing field removed? It makes it easy for you to understand what types of changes have happened in your data source. Now what I can do is I can click on Edit. And if you see, it shows me that there is one alert that has been detected. A new field which is a type was found in the previous stage. And that field gets added to the end. If I want, I can select it and say Done. And when I say Done, my error would disappear. It allows me to identify what kind of changes have happened in my data source. Now, on what basis did it identify that a new field has been added? How was this base data set able to identify that? It was able to identify that based on the column header. Right? There are two ways, and that is why it is always identifiable. It is always recommended that when you import any data, whether it is through custom report or through an external file, always have the column headers. Because when you have the column headers, your data set will simply use these column headers to identify any schema changes. The idea is Workday handles schema changes based on the source file header row. This is irrespective of whether you're using a custom report or a Workday report or an external file. Workday, it handles these schema changes based on the header row in the source file. Now, this is how it is managed. If the source file has a header row, in this case, we know that the source file is a custom report, and obviously these are the header rows of the custom report. This is what it maps. Supervisor org name, you will see it, maps to supervisor org name here. And then I have the superorg grid, which is maps here. And then I have the Argalwell from top. Workday uses these headers or these column headers to identify if there are any schema changes. If a source file has a header row, Workday uses the field names. In the header row of the dataset, to determine which fields are added. And remove in the new source file. System basically does this field by field comparison. It checks in the existing file. There was a supervisory org name, and then there was a supervisory org grade, which is also there in the new data which is getting imported. But then there's no field called type. Workday is able to recognize the changes based on the column headers. And that's why, if you see you're able to add a file field, you're able to remove a field from anywhere. You can do that from the start. You can do that from the end, or you can do that in the middle. In this case, I have added it right in the middle, a new field. Right? You can add. Or delete fields. Anywhere. In the source file. If your source file has a header and your dataset is reading that header as well, that makes managing your data source very easy because you can add new fields. You can remove existing fields from anywhere in the source file. When the source file does not have a header row, then Workday only handles that occur at the end of the source file. If your source file doesn't have a header, then there's no way for Workday to recognize what has changed, what has been added. Then Workday would only recognize changes that happened at the end of the source file. But it is again always recommended that you read the header as well. Because that way Workday would be easily able to manage what is changing anywhere in your data source. Manage field stage, a very important aspect. Now, this is a new field. I don't want to use it. I can click on Edit, Manage Fields, and I'm simply saying I don't need this type field and save them. Once you make changes to the base dataset, all the derived dataset which are based on it would be refreshed. You don't have to explicitly. That was a Manage Field stage. Right, Now what I have is my DD03. I want to open it in new tab, and along with that I also have my DDSSO4. This is my DDSSO4, wherein I read the external file of employee stocks. And wherein I added that unpivot stage. And this is my DSO3, right, wherein I have all the other information, the company details, the original one, wherein I did that union and join and on and forth. Now finally, what I need is for each of the workers which are in this list. If you see, I have these worker details. I want to understand or obviously get these stocks that are assigned to these workers, which is in this list. And how would I do that comparison? Obviously based on the worker name, which is a field of type text here. Here it is a field of type text. Right here. I have employee ID. Let's see what is this field type. This is a field of type text. Here employee ID is a field of type integer. I cannot go ahead and do comparison or join on two different field types. I cannot join or do a comparison between a text and an integer. I'll add a new manage field stage. Right. I would go ahead and change this to text. The reason I'm doing that is because now I have to join the final DDSO3, which has all the other details. And for each of these employees, I want to get their stock details, which is there in this field. And for doing that, I would join with worker and employee ID. And these cannot be different field types. And that's why I'm changing it to text. Another reason why you want to change field type, because without changing your field type, you'll not be able to do the relevant operations. Your join and union, those doesn't work. Employee ID, which here right now is identified as an integer, I'm changing it to a text. And save this. Now if I go back to this DDSO3, what I'll do is I'll open the lineage as well, that it becomes easy. Actions dataset new lineage. This is my DDSO tree. I want to join it with DDSO4. Here I'll click on edit. I am adding a new join stage. And this time I'm joining it with this dataset, which is DDSO4. Select that the moment I do that. Now, this is why I changed the field type, because when I'm joining, I would say join where the worker name. In my primary maps to worker here, but also where the worker ID or the employee ID. Maps to employee ID here. I cannot join because the data types. Have I not saved this yet? Or if you see, I again forgot to say. This is why I had to change it right. It was an integer. I changed it to text because if the field types are different, then my join doesn't work. Now, why is it still giving me an error? Because I have not saved it yet. I would go ahead and save this. Another reason why you would want to join. Change the field type. Now, I'll come back and do that join once again. And this time, let's go ahead and do our join. Worker name maps to worker here. The reason I'm not mapping only on worker name is because obviously worker names can be duplicate and employee ID maps to employee ID. Now, this time it is not showing me any error. And the reason for that is because I have converted this from integer to a text and also saved it. And then I would go ahead and select all the field types from here, but also from my I want to select everything except for obviously the worker and the employee ID. This, if you see, this join resulted in 27 fields. And now I have brought in extra fields from my DDSO4. Now my overall fields are 36 for each worker. I also get to see if I can scroll to the right. I am also seeing the details of how many stocks were granted to them, what is their vesting schedule, what is quantity outstanding, and on and forth. For each worker, I get to view PIDs, the plan names, and on and forth. During this, I don't need this load ID and load timestamp. I can quickly click on join. And I don't need these load IDs. They are not relevant. And see this. If I can refresh my Now we have created the entire lineage. If you see, here this is my overall lineage that I have built. This is that final data source and importing. I created a base data set from file to read the stock details. Read that into a derived data set wherein I added an unpivot stage. I added a managed field stage, and the reason I did that was to change the field type. This one. And finally, what I've done is I have joined it with my DDSO3. This is my overall lineage, and now, if you see, after creating many data sets, I have been finally able to bring all of my relevant data together from 4 different data sources. I brought data from 3 custom reports and also my external data, which was there outside Workday. I have been able to bring all of that data together into a single table or, in the context of a Prism analytics, into a single derived data set. Now, when I brought all of my data together, what I can do is I can do some filters if I want to. I can add some Prism calculations if I want to. I can also add some security if I want to. Please do like, share and subscribe to our channel.